Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here again. Okay, let's start sharing. Okay.
I can see it.
You can see it, good. Let's let me just put the chat so I can see if there are questions coming. Okay, so this is visible now. It's visible, okay, for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we're ready to go now. So as thanks a lot for the kind introduction. So I'm not gonna repeat what Ciprian already said. So I have a lot of years experience with databases, and now I work in Accenture Enkitech Group. We are Accenture. It's a big company. It's about 500,000 people. Even in Romania, I think there are 5 offices, so quite a lot of people employed in Romania as well. But we are a small group within this big corporation of about 120 people, 110, 120 people, that we are focusing on databases and different sorts of databases. But as Oracle is still the main vendor for relational database systems, then our focus and my focus as well has been with Oracle in the past years. But now, as well, I started working with data lakes and Hadoop systems together with Oracle as well. About today's presentation, we'll be talking about some experiences that I had with 19C following the upgrade. So it's not a new feature, it's not a typical new features presentation or anything like this. It's something that I picked up from life experience with clients, quite some strange cases that we encountered when upgrading big, in both cases, there were big data warehouses systems for our clients. So it's not going to be, it's not a typical upgrade marketing presentation or new exciting features of the 19C. We know there are many of them, and we know 19C. It's a stable release. We know that now Oracle has introduced this concept of innovation releases, and the other release is the production long-term support release. And 19C is the final version, the long-term support release for the 12C, 18C, 19C family. So what we'll talk about today, it's about what's happening with the DBMS job scheduler package. Is it still fully supported in 19C? And if it is, we'll see how. And some changes that are brought into the Oracle metadata regarding the query coordinator information. As well, before I start, because I agreed, because this is the final presentation of the day, so we don't have such a strict requirement to finish at top of the hour. Please ask your questions. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat as well. If that's okay with Ciprian, you can as well. For me, it's fine if you unmute yourself and pop a question, as long as we don't, there are not too many people talking over each other online. Okay, so that being said, let's proceed. So what is DBMS underscore job? So this is not the newest scheduler package that is in the Oracle database. It's actually quite an old package, and but we still have clients using it, because the long-term Oracle clients, they started using Oracle from Oracle 7, Oracle 8 version. They might have implemented it in their applications. And yes, it's not so, not all of the people were happy to migrate to DBMS_scheduler. But what we need to remember is that the package is built, or it's actually an API into an Oracle subsystem called the job queue. So from that point of view, it is very different implementation compared to DBMS scheduler. And the job queue allows for the scheduling and execution of PL/SQL programs at predefined times and repeating them at regular intervals if needed. The job queue is used extensively by Oracle Replication, for example, and was originally developed for the usage and the refreshing of the Oracle snapshots. So the DBMS job package provides programs the components of the package provide programs for submitting and executing job, changing job execution parameters, and removing or suspending the jobs if needed. The DBMS job is used by DBAs to schedule regular maintenance activities on databases or by applications to schedule large batch operations. The job queue can also be used to start up service programs that listen on database pipes and respond to service requests by user sessions. And this is what we used, for example, for one of my clients. How is it set up? The package is created when the database is created automatically. The creation script is called by cat_proc, which is normally run immediately after the database creation. The script creates the public synonyms, so everybody has access to the DBMS job for the package and grants execute privilege. All Oracle users can reference and make use of the package. So a few of the data dictionary views that display information are DBA jobs, user_jobs, DBA_jobs running for the currently running ones, and are created by the cat job queue script. The script is also located in the built-in packages source code directory. The job queue must have its dedicated background processes started in order to operate properly. This is accomplished by setting an init parameters in the init file for the database. The parameter is job_queue processes to a value. It can be any value from 1 to 36. The job queue package does not declare any package exceptions. So this is important to know, as I noticed a lot of clients, they are using DBMS job in their code. They cannot capture any exceptions or anything like this, so they will need to write their own exception handlers in the packages. Some job definition parameters. Okay, the job definition in the DBMS_job has many parameters, so that's not we're not going to spend the time going through each of them, but we're just going to stop over a few of them. So the job parameter, it's an integer that uniquely identifies the job. It can be either selected by the user or it can be automatically assigned by the system, depending on which of the two job submission procedures is used. So we can use it with job submit or job. We can create a job with DBMS job submit or DBMS _job I submit. So the submit procedure automatically assigns the job number, and it is returned as an out parameter. So it can be picked up and used later in the program, in your SQL program. The DBMS job I submit allows the users to specify a specific integer for the job. So you can give your own job number to the job you're submitting. Of course, there is always the risk if there is the programming is not correct, then you can submit another job that you submit a number for a job that already exists in the system, and that will create a conflict. Job numbers cannot be changed other than by removing and resubmitting the job. This is important to know. The job number is retained even when the database is exported and imported. This is important to know because DBMS underscore scheduler that replaced DBMS job has replaced this concept of job number with a job name. And yeah, I mean, the job name, it's a string. It's not so easy to manipulate within programs. And it doesn't have so strict rules as well. But because the DBMS job is, as mentioned before, it's just an API to the job queue subsystem of Oracle. So it's a way to actually access one of the inner workings of Oracle database. The DBMS job, it's actually the job number. It's actually a more powerful concept and variable. The what parameter, it's a character string that evaluates to a valid PL SQL code. So call to be executed by the job. So for example, we can enter our code into the what parameter, even if it is quite a lot of lines. Of course, that's not maybe the best recommended best practice. Is not a recommended practice. But what is the what parameter is actually what it will be executed by the job. This has a few important things that must be aware of. They need to be enclosed in single quotes, and important to know is the length of the parameter was limited to 2,000 bytes and then increased to 4,000 bytes. It's good to know these things if you work on legacy systems and you're wondering why they took certain approaches when doing the code many years ago. And a good tip is always to wrap the stored procedure invocations into an anonymous block. So instead of writing what my procedure, like I gave this example, my direct call to procedure, it is safer to use what begin the procedure and end. So we have a full block within the what parameter. Starting with 12CR2, the DBMS job is deprecated, and Oracle recommends that the clients will migrate to DBMS underscore scheduler package instead. And this is, I think, this is available quite many years. I think Oracle 10, if I remember correctly. But as I said, I have seen this in still clients using DBMS job in their large data warehouse applications. And one of the reasons the packages is still used is that it allows to create jobs that are part of a bigger transaction. If a failure causes an exception, all the current work along with the jobs defined as part of it can be rolled back. This is due to the particularity of the package that the rollback call will remove the job definition. It's a thing that looks quite weird sometimes. When you submit a DBMS job, you can, if you do it, for example, from the client, you always need to end the transaction in order to make the submission successful. Another case is that it allows programmers to start a job as part of a transaction and check the status later on during the same transaction by tracing the job ID. So quite a few very large database PL/SQL programs around are still using the package. So Oracle was convinced by the clients to keep supporting it, even if the feature is deprecated so long time ago. So according to what Oracle documentation states, and some blogs from Oracle, for example, if you go to Mike Dietrich blog, he is the product manager for database upgrades in Oracle and quite a public figure of speaking and advocating, evangelizing Oracle products. The DBMS jobs should be working fine. This is a screenshot taken from the 19C documentation, and it says clearly there that Oracle continues to support the DBMS job package. What they added, strangely, that should always raise a little bit an eyebrow, is the fact that it's an extra requirement that Oracle must grant the create job privilege to the database schemas that submit DBMS job. That's new. So what is going on? This package is around for almost 30 years, and all of a sudden there is this extra grant needed. So even if we have the expectation that in 19C, that we expect, based on what Oracle says, that all 19C code using the package will be backwards compatible, so it will work with no code changes, we have noticed failures in our programs. And that was where the job ID was used in the programs to check various statuses of the execution flow. So we checked deeper, and okay, we've seen that the create job privilege is needed. And during the upgrades of to 19C, all the jobs defined using DBMS job in the database, they automatically get converted to DBMS scheduler under covers. Okay, and here is a blog reference from this Oracle colleague that as well certifies that. The Oracle is introducing that provides a mapping between the job name and the scheduler job and the DBA scheduler job. So as you see here, the new data dictionary object maps the job number to the job name, and of course the owner is something that is known by the application. Hopefully, it appears as the changes in 19C is done under the covers, and Oracle even provides an okay. I said that Oracle's benefit. So what happened is that Oracle was compelled, probably by the clients, to keep using this DBMS job, but in the same time, they want to move and they don't want to maintain the old API, and maybe not even, or maybe even reduce the usage of the job queue subsystem. So they want to shrink their code base that they need to maintain. And they want in the same time to clients happy by keeping their applications unchanged. Unfortunately, we have seen that this workaround that they have implementing by uncover mapping of a DBMS job and somehow aliasing it to a DBMS underscore scheduler doesn't work in all cases. And this is due to the fact that, okay, these packages are very different in nature and they implement very differently as well. They take different parameters. And for example, our code was doing the following, was submitting a job with DBMS job submit, and then it was using a call to 6 contexts to pick up the background job ID that was just created. It's just one. So in my application session, it's just one, is that background job that I started. And then I could go and continue the work and then periodically check if something, if the execution has finished or not. So this is something very common that happens in data warehouse systems, where you want to start, you don't want to do a batch job where each operations waits one after each other. So you want to actually start, let's say we want to start updating the price list, but in the meantime, we want to, by the same batch, so by the same control flow or by the same PL SQL program, we want to start collecting the sales information from the subsidiaries, right? So these two, they can be run in parallel. There is enough CPU and there's enough resources in the system, but PL SQL will not allow us to do that. So in the PL SQL program, you say if you write an update, and then the second line need to write an insert or whatever. The insert will always wait until the update. If you say begin, update, insert, end, right? So common implementation approach they use by developers is that, okay, I start the begin, I put the DBMS job to do the update, and then immediately I go to the next step of the insert. And then I continue the program many steps, and I can once in a while I can go back and see if the job that was the statement that the job was running is completed. If it's completed, I can proceed with something. If it's not completed, I can wait, or I can do something else that is of lower importance. Okay, so that's the logic. Why would we implement such approach? But now we're getting the background job ideas before the correct one. So we now knew that there is a DBMS scheduled job running, and the number. So we suppose that the number that the job was returned was related to the DBMS scheduled job that was running under covers, and it was not the real job ID. So after testing and looking at the database objects that metadata objects that were updated during our transactions, we have found out that actually the new value return is indeed related to the object ID that is in the user objects for the actual shadow or ghost DBMS schedule job created. So what we would do, we pick up that job ID, then we'll go to the user objects where the object type is job, and match by that object, I think it's the object ID, and then we'll get the object name. And then guess what? The object name will be mapped to the scheduler job name that we can use to finally retrieve the job ID. So code changes are needed. So what Oracle says, the promise that Oracle makes in documentation is not valid in all the cases. So the code changes are needed. As well, there is an easier way to look at this by using the option number 2, where we can look at the mapping table and just strip out the DBMS underscore job $, and then the remaining numeric, it will be the job ID. But this approach is not fully documented, but I have seen it matches 100% of the cases. Maybe it's not the best idea to implement this second approach in a program that will go from release to release or through Oracle releases. But if you want to check something quickly, that's an easy, quick and dirty way to check these things. Okay, before I draw conclusions, so that was the case, and I want to stop here for a minute and ask if there are any questions. And this was, if the case was described clearly. And if there are
no question in the chat. There are no questions.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Yeah. I opened as well the chat here for me. So, anything else directly? No.
I have a let's say I have a question more related to the project than to the problem, because it depends on how big is the implementation on DBMS job. Before DBMS scheduler in Unix system, we used to work with cron job but of course these were not available from the client, from the application, let's say. So regarding this package and let's say the functionality, it's very it depends a lot on the type of application and how much is implemented.
Yeah, I understand. So okay, the crons, they enable you to schedule at the operating system level, and then that one will open a database session and it will call some procedure in the database if you want to schedule something running in the database. But the problem here was like this. So what the developers were doing here, they were implementing some kind of pseudo multi-threading in PL SQL. So they would go and start the session, as I said, and then from there, you say start session, update daily client processes or purchases, and then from there they will trigger update east, update west, update south, update north, whatever, you know. So, and all this, the requirement would be that they would be triggered at the same time and not to wait, and then we can go to the next step. So I would go and I say begin, and then update Germany, update France, and so on. And this will run in their own threads, in their own PL SQL threads. And they would, when they would be completed, when all they will be completed, I will do something. If only some of them would be completed, I will do something else, and so on.
Okay. Yeah, this is more based on the job queue mechanism.
That's what I mentioned at the beginning. That this DBMS job is actually an API towards the job queue. And then there was another problem that the system, when we looked, okay, let's say we rewrite and use DBMS scheduler. Okay, they had 80 plus places in the code. They had almost 100 places in the code that they will need changing in order to implement this migration to DBMS underscore scheduler. Even worse, or even more important than this, the module was a core module in the system, or the modules. So that would require testing of regression testing of 30 to 40 Mondays, automated regression testing. It's a big bank, and the database system, the size of the database was about 1 petabyte, and the interfaces towards other systems from where it was collecting data or updating data were in the number of 35, 40 interfaces, external interfaces. So the whole testing and so on required a lot of money for the client to spend for a change that Oracle promises that is done, we shouldn't worry about, that is done, yeah? So, so the client didn't really, it is a difficult discussion with the client because they can see the Oracle documentation says something, and then you go to them and you say, you know, you actually have to spend hundreds of thousands of euros in order to upgrade to new release because of this. So conclusion, I'm slipping onto the conclusion now because I can see there is no other question. The conclusion is that the change was done silently by Oracle. There are these mentions by Mike Dietrich and Connor McDonald in their blogs about this, but there is nothing in the documentation about this DBMS job getting created under covers. And there is nothing in the actual, I could not find anything in the documentation or in the my Oracle support to actually says, okay, if you have this case, here is the workaround we recommend you to do. So we had to spend some days to investigate this, find the problem. The workaround is available, and the logic of the change is quite easy after we figure out what is really going on in the Oracle system. Okay, and this last detail here, I already mentioned it to you. Nevertheless, it's more interesting. We raised an Oracle service request to Oracle support, explained the problem and its large business impact. Oracle were quite understanding and cooperative, and they raised a bug, and it's under work. So now the client would have two options: to go through the pain of modifying these 80 places in the code with these extra joins and stuff like this, or to wait for the Oracle patch. Nevertheless, when I checked last time, this is the bug. You can have the bug number here and so on. Oracle says fixed in product version 22.1. So if you are on 19C, according to this, most likely this will not is not planned to be fixed in 19C, which will be disappointing. They will fix it in 22.1. 22C is going to be an innovation release. So most likely, if we are in a, like my client was in a large data warehouse implementation, they will avoid going to the innovation release. So they will go to 23C. That will be about 3 years down the line. So if you are on 19C and you have DBMS_job issues, currently, most likely they need to be handled in the code. Yeah.
I have another question. So, of course, the client probably he was using before Oracle 12C or 18C, and then he updated the patch to Oracle 19C. Is it correct? Isn't it?
Yeah. No, the client. Yeah, the client. My client was on 18C.
18. Okay. And so in 18, this problem was not there.
No. This is
the package.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. This presentation is issues. It's about issues that you observe from going from 18C into 19C. So but this is not.
Yeah. But when he let's say upgraded, didn't he test all this in let's say pre-production environment before going with?
Yeah, of course. I mean, these problems we find them in pre-production. Okay. All these things that we found in pre-production, but that's why I said that will require the clients are currently forced to upgrade to 19C because the 18C has a very hard end of support life in June 2021.
Oh, yeah? Okay, I see. I understand now. Okay. Well,
so all the clients that are on 12C and 18C, they need to move into 19C. Okay. Even 10C has longer release life than 18C. Robust support. Or 11G. 10G or 11G.
Okay, okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, something else quite interesting, Virtualization. So in our programs as well, they were using Virtualization, the owner ID column, to get the query coordinator information. The approach was working fine since 11G when we implemented this, and according to the documentation, should still work on 19C. And here's a screenshot of, again, you can see on top, it's a release 19 documentation. And if you look at the owner ID column for the Virtualization, it says that it is the query coordinator information. Yeah. It says for operation using parallel slaves, interpret this value as the 4-byte value. The low order 2 bytes represent the session number, and the high order bytes represent the instance ID of the query coordinator. Okay. But after the upgrade to 19C, our code broke. So we are using the code in the code, we are using this Virtualization to get the query coordinator, and it was not retrieving anything. And this was during the test phase of the upgrade project. So we suspected the upgrade, and we ran a simple case to reproduce the problem. So here it is the case. So let's look at the code, which is in the second half of the screen. What we do, we create a table with about 100,000 rows. okay, with and then we run this with the select statement that it will spawn a lot of parallel slaves. It will spawn about 4 parallel slaves, but it will run for a long time. It will run a lot of time. Yeah. This kind of very simple test case. So we create a table with not so many rows, but then run a query like this to spawn, to make sure that it spawns the parallelism. Well, in this case, is 4, and then it runs for a long time, so we can observe it. So in a second session, we'll go and query the $session for this query for this session that we started separately, and we would exclude this number here, 2 million or something, or 200 million or something, that Oracle told us before, that this column contents, the column contents is invalid if the value is this 21474 whatever. And surprise, in the 18C, the SQL run on session 2 will return the expected QC information. In 19C, the SQL will not provide anymore the QC information. And if we remove the predicate, we'll get values, but all the values will be messed, will be this 21474, whatever, that Oracle says in the documentation that means that the value in that column cannot be trusted when it is like this. So whatever it displays, it's unreliable. So, and you can actually pick up the same and try it in your own test databases. And just create a table, run a query like this. It can be any query, but just make sure it runs with several parallel slaves and it runs for a long time. So you have time to go into another session and run something like this. So in 19C, we could not find a case of parallel execution where the VDOLA session to still keep the QC information. And we again follow up with Oracle and found out that they have an internal bug. So this is an internal bug. You have the number there. That is not, so it's not easy to find if you don't know of it. And that says that because of another fix, another fix in the system caused this view to have proper information for QC. The solution is simple one. Don't look at the VDOLA session, look at the $PX session to pick up the QC information. But nevertheless, it's good to know that if you have any programs that looks for the query coordinator for a parallel execution, that's not in the VDOLA session anymore. And this doc ID from Oracle support, it actually certifies this. So lessons learned after this case. Oracle's fix for an internal bug. So this was an internal bug, not a client bug, had a side effect that stopped populating the QC information in VDOLA session. They didn't raise another bug for that. They just, after some negotiating with them, they agreed that they will publish this into my Oracle support, this document and doc ID. So they closed our service request just by agreeing with us that, okay, they will inform us and they will make public that this is not anymore possible to pick up from QC information, the QC coordinator from that column. The workaround is easy, but it needs to be implemented. So if there is still something that you or the client needs to do, spend money, man hours to implement and test, to do something like this because of the upgrade. We should be careful about the documentation. As I put here, as I wrote here, even today, I think if you go to Oracle docs.oracle.com, you'll find something like this there. That's not true anymore. I don't know what this owner ID number or owner ID data type number it's actually displaying in VDOLA session. What is it used for? But for the parallel sessions, it's not. It doesn't provide anything relevant anymore.
So this is what the bug that you said in December that you asked Adriana from Oracle support. We had in December, if you remember, TechSession with.
Yeah, maybe I was asking in that session. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah. It's possible. Yeah. So again, something that I would like to be a takeaway for you from this session is observe that in both cases the documentation is not updated. Even if in the second case a support doc was released, but was released after just quite several weeks in which we, in representing the client, we have debated with Oracle support about this. So if you have a problem and if you notice that Oracle behaves differently between releases, especially between releases, or even if you notice that Oracle behaves strangely, of course, the first stop is the documentation. The next stop is my Oracle support. The third stop should be try to find out from experts, from people like conferences like this one, or people blogging or stuff like this on the internet, if they noticed similar problems like yours, and try to analyze. And I think as well, the support to Oracle is needed. Do not avoid, actually, even if sometimes it can be a bit frustrating, but do not avoid raising a service request and getting in touch with them and pushing them to solve your case. In both cases that I presented today, it was the work with Oracle support has helped. It didn't solve the problem 100%. So it's not that kind of support that actually you can just roll your thumb and relax and they will solve the problem for you. But it has helped in both cases. So you need, for the more complex cases, you need to use all of the channels. Conclusion about the upgrade. Care about the data stored in an Oracle database. We should always plan the upgrades very carefully by reserving time for analyzing the new features, obsoleted features, and other changes that might come with the new release, and do regression testing. So I can see a lot of clients, currently I have about 4 or 5 clients, for example, that they have just blindly upgraded to 19C. This client that in these cases today are picked up from, they have done a project, a 1-year project prior to the upgrade, and they have taken time to check everything's works fine. But some clients, they take just the risk to do the upgrade directly from 18 or 12C for 18C into 19C. Please do not recommend this to your clients. Try to convince them to open a project, a separate release, and reserve some resources to actually do the upgrade work, meaning check the new features. If there are new and obsoleted features paired, check to see if it's possible to easily remove the old feature and put a new feature in, like DBMS scheduler versus DBMS job. If it's not possible, look at other look at all the other side effects that might be if you go ahead and do the regression testing. And I say regression testing, I mean both for functional part, but as well for performance. And as well, if you are a shop that you don't have a full-time Oracle person on site, get in touch with somebody like from Enkitech or somebody else, a full-time Oracle person, to help you during this project lifetime. It will be well worth money. Here I have a list of references. You can find these bugs and doc IDs from my Oracle support if you're interested in these cases. And that's it from me. You can see that I'm actually on time almost. So any questions or comments or anything, please?
Thank you, Radu. I have a story to share.
Okay.
So it regards one of my clients. We have a old database, an 11G database with DG for ODBC connection to a MySQL database, and the client wanted to migrate to the cloud, and we successfully migrated the database, and everything was running in 20.1 version in cloud. The only problem was, 19.3 version of database. The only problem was that DG for ODBC connection was not working anymore. So I had to spend at least 2 weeks or even more each day, 2 or 3 hours to fix this problem. I raised a bug in support. They sent me to the same documents that and to the documentation that I was already set. Until at some point there was this guy from Oracle, and he managed to install in Linux another version of ODBC driver, and with this version it worked, but documentation was specifying an old version of. So this kind of, let's say, side effects when upgrading can come from different, let's say, areas. If the client application was implemented some kind of mechanism based on some old, let's say, utility like the BMS job, or they use an old library. Usually, this kind of situation can appear.
Yeah, definitely, and especially in the cloud. I mean, in the cloud.
Yeah, this is the second. This is the second question that I wanted to say. When migrating to cloud, you are forced to new releases, and you cannot skip, I think, more than 2 or 3 patches or something like this. So this comes with another kind of problems existing, let's say, having the system in the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends now. If you run on bare metal, so if you deploy Oracle on bare metal and you decide to do your own management of the installation, then they will not force you to upgrade. But if you go into some kind of service like autonomous, there is no control on it. Yeah. So that's another thing. We should really make distinction between what salespeople are saying and what really we as technologists are managing as applications and workloads. Of course, a new cloud system is exciting, it's new, and it has a lot of good features and so on. But the sales people will always say, yeah, everything will work and so on if you move, because they make they are not misleading, they are just making a very high level statement, right? Their statement does not apply to the very low level technical details like these two that I presented today. These are very technical details that you would not expect that will occur. You would not expect that, okay, if you make an analysis for 19C migration and you see you have a lot of DBMS job in your program, you look in the documentation, it says it's supported, that's it. So paying attention to details, see that there is this extra requirement for that extra privilege there, it might sometimes might pay off. So Yeah. So this is what I want to share with you today. So I hope this was maybe entertaining for you a little bit, and maybe it was not very dry and maybe not too technical as the last session of the day.
Well, for me it was interesting, and I hope for everyone also. Are there any other comments or questions?
If you want, please unmute yourself and just ask directly.
Yeah, you need to unmute yourself. I forgot. Julia is writing in the chat if you have more advantage.
So, okay, I'm thinking about next, I don't know. So maybe it's a good time to ask you guys in a couple of months to build a presentation on data virtualization. So there are products on the market that allows us to use Oracle and data lake together. So you can have, for example, data from different Oracle databases send into an Oracle data lake, and then logging into an Oracle database and query and join data that it is in natively in the Oracle database externally into the Hadoop cluster.
Yeah, this kind of presentation would be very interesting.
Okay, so then I already have a couple of clients for this. They showed interest, so you are another one. So that already has made has tilted the balance for me. So I will do it next. I will start working with this. So
okay.
in the next 4 to 6 weeks, I'll have something ready.
Speaking about the next, let's say, event, I will take your screen, and I want to share my screen because yeah, some of these problems that let's say we have maybe wouldn't happen if there is some testing done in Oracle coding. So our next event on 23rd of February is on a framework, UT-PL-SQL, for testing in Oracle database. So go to on our site and subscribe to this event, and especially if you are a developer, but not only, because it will be an introduction and demonstration how to use this framework for conducting user testing cases in Oracle database. Yeah, on March we will have. It's not yet presented, but I wanted to discuss with you. We will have another Romanian presenter, Victor Mihalcea, who will talk about database. He's a Java champion, consecrated for hibernating technology, and he is invited to Romanian Oracle user group together with a Dutch presenter, Piet de Visser. Then we will have another session probably in April or May. Still, this one is not yet scheduled. We don't have any team. So, Radu, if you consider that period as okay for you, you can think about that.
Yeah, that would be perfect, actually.
And end of April, beginning of May.
Yeah.
And yeah, what I wanted also to present to our participants is our, let's say, membership program. We have this address, www.roug.ro.memdri, membri in Romanian. Well, there you find the information you can support Romanian user group, because this is a voluntary project, but still we need some resources in order to pay an paid account for web conference, hosting, and so on. So if you want to sustain our activity, you can find there some details. Don't forget to follow us on social media. So thank you all for being present. Thank you, Radu, again. Don't forget 23rd February 2021. Then follow us and find out more regarding the future events. Anything else? Okay, so if there is not anything else to add, I would like to end this event. Thank you everyone for being present. Thank you, Radu, for your contribution. Let's hope the future will be safer and we will be able to meet in flesh and blood. But I think the next at least half a year it will be online. Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.